welcome back. We're going to do another lesson on lateral work today, and I want to introduce a new horse to you, but one of our old favorites, Ruth Hogan Polson, and she's riding Otello. Otello has quite an interesting history. He's a Lusitano who in a previous lifetime was a bullfighter. So now he's being our dressage demo today for our first advanced lateral exercise lesson, which is going to be on shoulder in. So far we've had 2 lessons on lateral exercises. We've had an introduction to leg yielding, going over the aids and how to tell if you're doing a quality leg yield. And in this volume 2, we've showed how to solve some common problems with leg yielding. But now we're going to start some of the advanced lateral exercises. And here's how I want you to think about lateral exercises. The word lateral means that we're going forward and sideways at the same time. So I want you to pretend, make like a little outline in your mind, and the heading on the outline says lateral exercises, meaning that you go forward and sideways at the same time. On one side, like in one column to the left, under lateral exercises, we have leg yielding and turn on the forehand. On the other side, we have exercises like shoulder in, which we're going to show in this lesson, and haunches in, which we're going to show in the next lesson, and half pass. Now, if you were to look at these 2 categories of lateral exercises and sum up in one word what was the difference between the first category of lateral exercises and the second category of lateral exercises, that word would be bend. In the leg yields, there is no bend through the spine of the horse. We do have flexion, remember, at the pole, and the flexion is away from the direction of movement, but the body of the horse is straight. And that's why leg yields are pretty easy for young horses. They're good, loosening, stretching, warm-up, toe-touching type exercises. But when we get to the advanced lateral exercises and we have bend, they're a little more difficult for the body of the horse. Otello's paying very good attention here, you can see. And what I want you to think about is it's sort of like a mathematical formula. Write down the word bend, then make a plus sign, and then write down the word sideways and make an equal sign, and then write down the word engagement. Bend plus sideways equals engagement. And what we mean by engagement is the bending of the joints of the hind leg. And as the horse bends the joints of the hind legs, what happens is his croup lowers, and as a result, if you think of his body as a seesaw, the croup goes down and the forehand, everything from the withers forward, goes up. And the horse resembles like a speedboat in the water or an airplane taking off. That engagement creates a collection, and we want to shift that center of gravity toward the hind legs to collect the horse so that his forehand is lighter and freer and he can just be more athletic in his movement. So any of the advanced lateral exercises, the key word is bend. Now shoulder in, I like to think of shoulder in sort of as the father of all the lateral exercises. Shoulder in accomplishes many things in addition to the collection, which we just spoke about, and also as a result of that engagement of the inside hind leg. It's a strengthening exercise for this inside hind leg. It's sort of like doing deep knee bends. But also, we use shoulder in as a straightening exercise because the correct way to straighten the horse is always to bring the forehand, the shoulders, in front of the hindquarters, and never to bring your leg back and push the hindquarters or leg yield the hindquarters back out behind the forehand. So shoulder in has many, many roles. Straightening exercise, collecting exercise, strengthening of the inside hind leg exercise. So you might ask, Otello was asking me, you might ask when you're ready to start these advanced lateral exercises. Well, remember our formula, bend plus sideways equals engagement. The key word is bend. When your horse is ready to bend along the arc of a 10-meter circle, then you're ready to start, because that's the degree of bend that the horse will have through his spine, the degree of bend that he would have if he were going on a 10-meter circle. And maybe your horse at this point can only do that at the walk. That means that you can start shoulder in the walk. Maybe he can do it in the walk and in the trot. Then you can do it both in the walk and in the trot. And what I mean by bending correctly is that the horse does not evade the difficulty of the movement, the increased bend through his body and the increased bending of the joints of the inside hind leg by either swinging his hindquarters out or swinging his hindquarters in. When his spine directly overlaps the arc of a 10-meter circle, he's ready to start shoulder in. And that's because shoulder in, think of it this way, is simply the first step of a 10-meter circle, and then we interrupt that 10-meter circle and just continue on a straight line. So obviously it stands to reason that if your horse can do a 10-meter circle, he can obviously do the first step of the 10-meter circle. But we interrupt that 10-meter circle and we bring the forehand 30 degrees off the rail. Now what's 30 degrees? If you think of a right angle to the rail, that's 90 degrees. And when we did our leg yielding exercises, especially the one where we went head to the wall, it was pretty obvious for you to see, we had the horse's body at a 45-degree angle to the wall. When we ask for 30 degrees and we bring the shoulders in less than we would for a leg yield, it puts the horse on what's called 3 tracks, which means if Otello was going to do, let me just move his forehand a little bit here, Ruth, whoops, right shoulder in, he would be on 3 tracks. His left hind leg would make a separate track. I would not be able to see his right hind leg because it would be directly in front of the left foreleg, so that those 2 legs make a second track, their own track, and then the right front leg makes a 3rd track. So the horse is on 3 tracks when he's on a 30-degree angle. If we bring the shoulders in any more than that, then the horse is on 4 tracks rather, and it's really, really very difficult for the horse to bend through his body at an angle greater than 30 degrees. So what he ends up doing is a leg yield. He becomes straight through his body and does a leg yield, which is fine if your goal is to do a leg yield, which is that loosening, stretching, toe touching, warm-up type exercise. But if you have a goal of either collecting the horse or strengthening the inside hind leg, then he must bend. So you want to be sure that you don't come in any more than 30 degrees off the track with the shoulders. So let's get back to the aids here. You're on your 10-meter circle, you're bending the horse along the arc of the circle, and the way that you interrupt the circle and tell the horse to just take that first step of the 10-meter circle and continue on the straight line is that in the moment that you want him to continue, you close your inside leg, your eyes look down the long side in the direction you want to go, and your 2 arms function as a unit. If you want to bring the shoulders to the right, the 2 arms come to the right. If you want to bring the shoulders to the left, the 2 arms come to the left. That's to the right, good. See how good he is? And 2 arms to the left, that's super. Now notice what Ruth did, that was perfect. She kept her hands equidistant from her body when she brought the arms to the right and the arm to the left. Sometimes people bring one hand closer to the body, and look what that does to my shoulders. It does the same thing to the horse's shoulders, sort of tips the horse over on the inside shoulder. So the 2 arms function as a unit. If I were doing right shoulder in, I would almost think right hand to the right of my right hip, and left hand pretty close to the withers, although you never cross over. So that the 2 arms as a unit, right arm to the right, left arm to the right, 2 arms to the right, staying equidistant from the horse's body. Okay, so what we're going to do, we want to know in the same way that we tested to see if we had quality leg yields, we need to know if we have quality shoulder in, which basically means is the horse bending around the rider's inside leg, or has he straightened his body and he's simply doing a leg yield? So Ruth, what I want you to do, I want you to have your back to the camera, but I want you doing a 10-meter circle in the walk somewhere. So you decide whether you want to go on that long side or the other long side. And then just pick a point like at P, And just walk a 10-meter circle and just do it a couple of times while I talk here. So, she's on a circle and she goes over her bending aids. Weight on the inside seat bone, inner leg on the girth, outer leg behind the girth to help curve a little bit further behind the girth with the outer leg, there you go, to help curve the back end of the horse around her inner leg. Vibrating inside rein to ask the horse to look a little bit to the inside, and supporting outside rein to make sure that the horse doesn't bend in the neck more than the body. That looks really good. What I would like you to do is halt on the first step of the 10-meter circle, and we're going to evaluate if you're in a good shoulder in position. And halt, excellent. Whoops. Now that was a really, really cool thing that we just saw. You can just let him settle there if he will. He did halt in a very good shoulder in position, and then he took his outside hind leg and stepped out with it in order to relieve the hind legs. So what you're seeing now, this is how you can tell if your horse is really bending. Look at the hindquarters of the horse, that's all. Pretend that you couldn't see anything from the saddle forward. When the horse is truly bending and shoulder in, the hindquarters should be absolutely parallel to the track. And when she first halted, they were parallel. That meant he was bending nicely around her inner leg. And then he realized, boy, that's kind of hard work, and he stepped out with the outside hind, and you can now see that his hindquarters are at an angle to the rail. So if she were to continue down the long side in this position, she would basically be doing a leg yield in a shoulder in position rather than an engagement exercise, the shoulder in with bend. Ruth, walk forward on the circle again, just to get yourself organized. And this next time, walk down the long side in shoulder in, and we're going to look at the hindquarters of the horse. So remember our formula. We always bend first before we go sideways. So that's why she's making a circle. And if she were going large around the arena, she would use the corners as if they were 1/4 of a 10-meter circle. And she, yep, good. That's fine there. She brings the forehand 30 degrees off the track, so the left hind leg and the right foreleg are in the same track. Good, and look at his hindquarters. They are parallel to the rail, but he is drifting a little bit to the inside, which is how he is finding a way to escape the bending of the joints of the inside hind leg. That was good, do it again. You can either bend in that corner or you can circle. So she goes over the bending aids, weight on her inside seat bone, inner leg on the girth, outer leg behind the girth, vibrating inner rein, supporting outside rein. Then she drives with her inside leg. Her eyes look straight down the long side. Very nice, that's perfect. Very good, and the two arms come to the left to lead the shoulders to the left. Very nice. Now it's harder for you to see the haunches when she's coming at you, but you can see how she's very, very nicely on 3 tracks. That's super, and straighten him before the corner. Well done. You can see that the horse looks to the inside and the rider looks straight down the long side. Not only does that tell the horse where to go, but it's a very elegant look. This is an example of not wanting to look straight between the horse's ears as you do that. So what I'd like you to do is the same thing in the trot, if you would. Do a circle, go over the bending aids on the circle. And what I want all of you watching to do is look at the hindquarters and evaluate whether the hindquarters are exactly on the track or if they have drifted out. Good. So that they are at an angle to the rail. Very nice. A hair more angle. Just a hair, that's it. Good, very good. Yeah, so she used the corner as if it was a quarter of a 10-meter circle. That's just right. Lovely. Yep. Good. Awesome. And straighten them and walk. That's super. Good. So it was interesting to see it in both directions, because going away from you, you could see that the hindquarters were parallel to the track, which meant he had bend. In the beginning in the trot, he didn't quite have enough angle. He was in a position we call shoulder 4, which is half the angle of the shoulder in. If you're just starting, it would be better for you to do shoulder 4, in other words, less angle, like a 15-degree angle instead of 30 degrees, and still have that bend with the haunches parallel, than to try to go for the whole 30 degrees and have the hindquarters swing out. So we could see going away from us that the hindquarters were parallel to the rail, regardless of whether she did shoulder 4 in the beginning and at the end she increased the angle and made shoulder in. Coming toward us, it was easy to see that he was exactly on 3 tracks, with the inside hind and the outside fore in the same track, so that the horse is on what we call 3 tracks. If she brought his shoulders any further over than that, then he would have to swing the hindquarters out at an angle to the rail, and it would be a leg yield. So that was very, very nice. Now, I want to just talk to you about some common mistakes that riders make, and maybe I can get Ruth to indulge us and make some mistakes here for us. But I'm not sure if you noticed or not, but when Otello was first going away, because it asks for so much more engagement of the inside hind leg, he started to drift a little bit to the inside. This is one way that the horse evades the increased engagement of the inside hind leg. And one of the most common mistakes that riders make when they feel the horse drifting to the inside is they take their 2 hands, which should be to the inside if you're leading the shoulder in, and they take that inside rein and start to use it as an indirect rein to hold the horse on the track. Now, if you bring your inside hand as an indirect rein, you will keep the horse on the track, but you'll do nothing to engage the hind legs, because your reins control everything from here forward, and your legs control the hind legs. And if the horse is drifting off the track, then you need your inner leg to say, come on, inside hind, bend more and step under the heavy point of the body. So what I'd like to see you do, I want to see you make the mistake. I'm not sure how to place you so it'll be easiest to see, but let him start to drift to the inside, going away, and then bring your inside hand as an indirect rein so we can see that he is in fact at that point just bending in the neck and the body is straight. And if you can do it either in the walk or the trot, doesn't matter. But start a shoulder in, let him start to drift off the track, and then take your left hand to the right. That's good. I mean, it's terrible, but it's good. It's good for our purposes of education. Do that again, Ruth. That was perfect. So, pretend you're starting shoulder in, let him drift off the track, and then left hand to the right. And you see, that was perfect. All that does, very good, you can walk for a second. All that does is overbend the horse's neck and the shoulder falls out, the opposite of what we want, the shoulder falling in. That was perfect. Now I'd like you to make the correction the correct way. Okay, so start to put him in shoulder and let him drift off the track, and then bump him with your inner leg to tell him to engage his left hind, and keep your 2 hands to the left rather than that left hand becoming an indirect rein. So let him drift a little bit. Now bump him inner leg. And everybody watch the left hind leg. Very good. And again, bump him inner leg while 2 hands stay to the left. Excellent. Good. Once more. Not bad for a retired bullfighter, wouldn't you say? Let him drift, and then inner leg while your 2 hands stay to the left. Lovely correction. That's the way to correct. You can walk and pat him there. That was excellent. Now I'm going to talk about another common mistake that riders make. I'll just pretend because she's on this side of me that she's doing right shoulder in. Rather than keeping the inner leg on the girth, we're pretending Ruth is circling to the right now, rather than keeping it on the girth, not only as a pole for the horse to bend around, but so that it's in an engaging position. It can tell the inside hind leg to engage the way she just did. A lot of times riders will let this inner leg drift back, and rather than doing shoulder in, they end up on a 30-degree angle, but they end up pushing the hindquarters out, and once again it becomes a leg yield. So I want you to show us a leg yield and shoulder in position just once on each rail so we can see your inner leg coming too far back. And what I want all you guys who are watching to look at is the hindquarters. You'll see that they're at an angle to the rail. So bring your right leg back, there, very good. You see how the hindquarters are at an angle to the rail. Good. Straighten them, do that again next long side. Otello's getting very excited that he's being a model. Yep, good. You see she's at an angle greater than 30 degrees and the haunches are at an angle because her inner leg is too far back. That's awesome. He can walk again. He's getting very pleased with himself, isn't he? Okay, so another common mistake that riders make is that, we're going to pretend now we're going to the left. Actually, we're going to pretend that we're going to the right. So her right leg is on the inside. Let's say they manage to keep the inner leg on the girth where it should be. A lot of times the outer leg either comes off the horse's side or it stays on the girth rather than being a little behind the girth the way it would be on a circle. And what that does is it allows an escape route for the horse once again to swing the hindquarters to the outside so the horse can evade the difficulty of the movement, evade the engagement of the inside hind leg. So we need to know that your outside leg as a rider is there to help control that outside hind leg. So I'm going to do a little exercise here that I like to do to help the rider make sure that that outer leg is placed behind the girth. And you can just do this in the walk. What I would like you to do, and I know this is a little premature because we have not done the lesson on haunches in, but we're doing that next. We're going to start in haunches in, and you're going to walk down the long side in haunches in for a few strides, and you will find in the next lesson that the haunches in is actually the last step of a 10-meter circle continued on the long side. And then she's going to progress up to the first step of the 10-meter circle. So there's only one stride really between haunches in and shoulder in. And then you're going to go back to haunches in, and then you're going to go back to shoulder in. Just a few strides of each. The main reason we're doing this exercise is so when she is in haunches in, we know her outer leg is back and it's close to the horse. And what we want the rider and the horse to feel is the relationship between the haunches in and the shoulder in terms of where the outside leg of the rider should be and what it should be doing. So just in the walk, let's try that. So the inner leg is on the girth, the outer leg is behind the girth. Now feel how close your outer leg is and swivel him into shoulder in and keep your outer leg there. So the bending aids stay the same. Good. Yep. There you go. There you go. And back to haunches in. Keep the bend. Good. And back to shoulder in. And this is a good way for you to tell that your outer leg is where it belongs. And haunches in. Good. If you want to, you can do that in the trot once. Or do it again in the walk, whichever you want. Start with the haunches in, though. So her outer leg is back against his side, good, and shoulder in. Keep your outer leg in the same spot, beautiful. And haunches in, good, and shoulder in, perfect. Good, and walk and pet him, awesome. So that's a very, very good rider exercise. So I want to finish up with just one more exercise, and this is for all of you, like most of us, who have to ride by ourselves most of the time. And you need to know whether you're doing quality work, because I've mentioned the word evasions a couple of times. I'd like you to understand the difference between an evasion and a resistance. A resistance is a very obvious thing, like the horse is tossing his head in the air or running backwards or whatever. So when a resistance is happening, you know you have to do something about it. Evasions are sneaky, they're very subtle, and because they're so subtle, they can creep in unnoticed until they become a big problem. For example, this shifting out of the hindquarters to avoid the bend, therefore losing the engagement of the inside hind leg. So if you don't have wall-to-wall mirror around your arena, which very few of us do, or a trainer with you every day, you need to know when you're doing shoulder in that the horse is truly bending through his side. So here's an exercise that I like to do. I like to alternate, just going straight down the long side with a few steps of shoulder in, straight, shoulder in, straight, because the hindquarters, like I said earlier, should be exactly in the same position whether you're just tracking straight down the long side or whether you've brought the forehand in at a 30-degree angle off the rail. When you do bring the shoulders in, if you feel the hindquarters change into a different position, you know that the horse has lost the bend and has escaped through your outside leg. So either walk or trot in either direction, but alternating between straight for a few strides, haunches in for a few strides, and what you people who are watching the lesson should look for is do his hindquarters good, stay in the same position, and shoulder in again. Now there they shifted out just a hair, but they're not bad. Good, and again. Straight, haunches in, good, straight. The haunches should stay in exactly the same position, good. Haunches, shoulder in, sorry, I meant. And straight, super. And walk and pet him. Good boy, Otello. That was great. So bring him up here. I just want to do a quick review. Just bring him around here. So this is very exciting. This is our first lesson on one of the advanced lateral exercises. And this exercise, like I said, was shoulder in. It's the father of all the advanced lateral exercises. It is a straightening, a strengthening of the inside hind leg, and a collecting exercise. And when the horse does shoulder in, his body is bent along the arc of a 10-meter circle, and the forehand is brought in off the track at a 30-degree angle so that the horse ends up on 3 tracks. The way to tell that you're doing quality shoulder in, knowing that it isn't turning into a leg yield, is to just look at the hindquarters. The position of the hindquarters should look exactly the same when you're in shoulder in as they do when you're just going straight down the long side. So I think Otello did a fabulous job. He was perfect. Do you think if we gave him a little rest that he could also do haunches in for us?
I think he's ready.
Okay, very good. All right, I'll see you on the next lesson where we do haunches in.